Good morning, everyone. My name is Charmaine Kendal, and I am a student at the Philosophy School in Cape Town, South Africa. And this morning, I would like to invite you to join me on a journey. And this journey is into the heart of Southern Africa. We are going to look at the Khoisan peoples and to learn something about them. I've just seen a comment from Joe from New Zealand where it's evening. Well, welcome. Let me continue. The Khoisan peoples are one of the oldest, resilient and courageous indigenous communities in the world, still now. They lived in South Africa more than 140,000 years ago, and it was only with the arrival of the settlers that their life became disrupted, and they sadly became dispersed and destroyed many of their communities. At the moment, there is only one community that is intact. It's a small clan of Bushmen in the Kalahari desert in southern Africa. So who were the Khoisan? Let's have a look. The Khoisan were two groups of people, the Khoi and the San. Now, I've marked off the Khoi in blue, turquoise, and they, as you can see, lived in the south and west of southern Africa, and the San, or Bushmen as they were known, lived in the the central areas and up the east coast. So, let me speak a little bit more about these peoples. The Khoisan, although two distinct groups, they were very similar, and their way of life was shaped by their environment. The San, often called the Bushmen, lived in the central area, as I said, and they were expert hunter-gatherers. Most of that area is desert and semi-desert. So the San learned to gather and collect plants, roots. They learned to look for water, and they had a deep understanding of the environment in which they lived. And they hunted. They were hunters. The Khoi were herders, and they lived in the areas where the environment was lush and green, and they moved in communities to follow the grazing lands. Now, although they are separate, they both have a language based on clicks. They both have intricate social structures and are strongly spiritual. They were connected to the land and to each other. They had a holistic view of life, where all aspects of life are connected, and they were very much in harmony with nature. So let me show you something of these people. You can see here the Khoi hunter with his bow and arrow. The San hunter and the Khoi herder. One of the things to note about these groups of people is that community was at the center of their lives. They were communal people. They lived together. So the question is, in our fast-paced world, a very different world to the world they lived in. What can we learn from them? I have selected 5 principles that I think are worthy. I'm sure that there are many more principles. Now, the first principle I'd like to speak about is the interconnectedness of life. The Khoisan and the San believed in a universal spirit, a supreme spirit that permeated everything. And this spirit was in people, animals, plants, ever present. There was no separation for them in their spiritual world, their social world, and their natural world. Every action, every relationship, every ritual was part of a greater whole. The first principle is about the interconnectedness of life, and it can be seen very clearly in the example of their hunting. So I won't go into the ritual of the hunting, but when an animal was hunted and tracked and brought down, there was a ritual to thank the animal's spirit, to release the spirit, and to acknowledge the sacrifice it has made for the group. They were not ego-driven hunts. They were communal hunts for food, for the meat to be shared by everyone in the community. And there was a great sense of the flow of the spirit of life. There was this honoring of the relationship between people, animals, and the land. And what can we learn from that? We can learn that before every decision we make, we pause to consider, how will this affect others? How will it affect the world around me? This mindset can inspire us to act with greater empathy, responsibility, and care. Closely linked to the first principle is the second one, which is land as sacred and communal. Land was not something owned by individuals. The land was seen as Mother Earth, and it was a sacred gift entrusted to the community. The chiefs were caretakers, deciding on where to go and what to use. But this was a sacred gift entrusted to the community. Imagine how different our world would be if we saw that we were caretakers of the land and we treated the land with respect. So what can we learn? We need to live consciously, sustainably, and to make sure to protect this wonderful gift that has been given to us. Closely linked to this is the next principle, which is harmony with nature. The Khoisan had to rely on nature, and they respected nature. The Creator was seen as the giver of rain, health, and abundance. And all rituals and practices were in deep respect for the environment. When there was hunting, or as I've mentioned, or collecting of wild roots, melons, plants, food, there was a specific way of doing it. It was done with care. They had to make sure that the plants were able to continue growing and remain healthy for future generations. Only what was needed was taken. And on leaving the plants, there was often a ritual or gifts were left in gratitude for the plants. So what can we learn? We can reduce our ecological footprint. Even small acts, planting a tree, conserving water, would help. But above all, we need to make sure that we only take from Mother Earth what we need. And then we share it with others, which brings me to the next principle, which was community and sharing. A strong factor in the communal society was that if strangers came into the one group's orbit, they were naturally included. There's a lovely ritual of the uskuk or ash cake, which is baked in the fire and then shared with anybody who is there, even strangers. And the fire, of course, is a great symbol of community and sharing. So maybe we can share our metaphorical fires with our neighbors. Maybe we can greet them and connect with them and recognize again that we do live in communities. And finally, the last principle was the principle of restorative justice and consensus. The Khoisan did not believe about punishment restoring harmony. In fact, if there was a dispute, it was generally solved around the fire in communities. Whoever was involved was there, and there was an attempt through dialogue and recognizing the need to resolve the issue. And in that way, the balance in the community was restored. As I mentioned earlier, the Khoisan lived for thousands of years without major wars, and that was because of this incredible sense of community, of living together, and of recognizing the dignity and harmony. So although this is ancient teaching, what can we learn from it? We can learn a great deal. And I encourage you, as you go out and live your lives, that you take to heart the ancient wisdom of the Khoisan. Thank you for joining this morning. I've enjoyed sharing this with you, and I hope you will enjoy sharing it with others, liking the page and commenting. I would love to hear some more. Please join us next week at the same time for Philosophy Live.